Thank you, Speaker, and I want to stand to support this motion and congratulate my brother Omboko Milemba for bringing this motion to the House. I would like also to echo the sentiments of other members that we need to craft a bill out of this motion so that we can compel government to actually do what Omboko Milemba has envisioned in this motion. Mr. Speaker, education is a blend of infrastructure, it's a blend of a good curriculum, it's a blend of good human resource, and also leadership. Now, if you look at what we have in this country, we have done so much, but we have left infrastructure development in our schools to no leadership at all. Now, you realize that there are so many schools today that want to admit students, but they cannot because they do not have the infrastructure. The government policy on transition rates, that they are looking at 100%, is a noble idea. If you look at economics of education, it will tell you that the benefits of an education, especially from primary to secondary school, is higher in a country than any other because it has more social benefits. It is prudent to have all our children in this country go at least to Form 4, finish high school. And then after that, they can go to other areas. But as it begins today, even if we struggle for 100% transition, the quality of that education, you know, if you have good infrastructure in a school, it will improve the retention rate of kids. It will keep teachers even in those schools. But today, we have schools in this country where a teacher cannot afford a chair, where a teacher cannot have a table to do his work, where a teacher has to sit under a tree to do work and mark books for kids. That already tells you that the teacher is demotivated. You have a teacher who goes into a classroom that is so dilapidated that he does not feel like he is an officer in the job group and ranking that he is like another teacher in a better school. That in itself demotivates and actually reduces the retention rate for teachers in schools. That's why you see teachers don't even feel like going to school, because when they leave their beautiful homes and they're going to work, and the place they're going to work is somewhat demotivating, that they would not want to be there in the next minute. That compromises on quality of education. On the learners, Mr. Speaker, learners who have to go to a school lose self-confidence if they go to a school that is not does not have proper infrastructure. This child who is in Form 4 in a school that is dilapidated in the rural of Kilifi County, and a kid who is in Nairobi, both of them pursuing Form 4, and they have to do an O-level examination at the same time, you can imagine the consequences of not providing the infrastructure to this child in Kilifi. Why? Because the performance can never be the same. So in order to bridge the gap between the poor and the rich in this country, and to bridge the gap between failure and passing in this country, government must make deliberate move to ensure that there is infrastructure. I want to go back to what my friend Honorable Milemba is saying. We need to look at day schools. If we equip more day schools, build more day schools, give more infrastructure to day schools that is good and quality infrastructure, this country will never be the same. If you look at the studies of Smith and Schultz in the United States, if you look at the development trajectory, they will tell you the difference why the United States had an upper hand in development. They'll tell you it's because there was better education. Today we still say that Kenya was at the same level with Malaysia and Singapore and all those other countries. But if you look at the reason why Kenya lagged behind these economic tigers was because of the quality of education that we have in this country. Because they invested a lot more in infrastructure and the good quality of education, they shot up the economic trajectory. But Kenya remained because we had lesser and lesser investment in education. Today, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya envisages that we need to do equalization of the country so that those areas that were initially marginalized can move to be at the same level with other places. And there was a fund which was put in the Constitution, that is 0.5%. And that 0.5% also catered for education. Actually, the 4 areas that are shown in the Constitution: education, housing, health, and roads. They're there in the Constitution. But if you ask the Ministry of Finance today how much they have dispersed money for infrastructural development under the equalization fund, you realize that they are not doing that. And yet this country's development and trajectory in the future depends so much on education. If you go to Kilifi County today, you realize that a lot of kids are border riders. And if you ask why, they tell you they never got an opportunity to go to high school. Why? Because there was no space, there's no school, there is no opportunity. This country needs to create an opportunity by building more day schools, so that we have every child that finishes primary school accesses a secondary school. We also have a child who is 6 years must access a primary school. But it is very sad to note that kids do not access schools because the schools are more than 10 kilometers away from home. 10 kilometers away from home. How does a child who is 6 years get to a school that is 10 kilometers? I think you need to have a deliberate policy to reduce the distance from home to school for primary schools and also for secondary school, so that every child has an opportunity. And I think one of the things that why countries have governments is that governments are supposed to create opportunities for their citizens. And the greatest opportunity that a country or a government can ever create is the opportunity to give a child an opportunity to go to school. That's what we need to do. And therefore, we need to look at treasury. And when this budget, and you know we are a house that is the budget-making house. And when these estimates come to this house, I think we should be very keen to see how much money is going specifically to education, because the future of the children, the future of this nation, and the economic development of this country will depend on nothing else apart from the education that we give to our people. Mr. Speaker, the social benefits to education are very big. Governance. If people are educated in a country, they will ensure there is better participation, they will ensure there is better governance, they will ensure there is better agriculture, they will ensure there is better maternal and health care if people are educated. We shall spend less money in health if people have a good education. We shall produce more food if people are properly educated, because they'll have more technological advances in agriculture. They'll do better farming. If people are educated, they will take care of the young people better. Children will be brought up well. There'll be lesser disease if we invest in education. And the first thing to do is to ensure there is a school. But what quality of a school do we need? We need good infrastructure. Today, some of the kids that have come from rural areas, when they go to interviews, they fail to get jobs, not because of anything else, but because their self-esteem is low, because of where they have come from. Because government has not invested in a school, they look at themselves as inferior. And therefore, the gap between the rich and the poor in this country still continues to widen. The chasm becomes bigger. Why? Because others are going to better schools that have better infrastructure and better layout than others. And therefore, we continue the gap between the poor and the rich. But there must be a deliberate effort to ensure that if a school is being put, it must have certain standards and quality. And it is the responsibility of government to ensure that this service or this fundamental right is provided to the people and the children of this country. I like what the president said the other day. He said that he will ensure, I think one is that man, will ensure that every child in this country goes to school. He even said that even if children must go to school and there are no classes and they have to be under trees, it is still okay because they are in school. But that should be taken forward by the Minister of Education to ensure that the President's dream, to ensure that everybody goes to school, is not curtailed by the lack of facilities in schools. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you and support the motion from my friend here. Thank you very much.
Next is Honorable Kega.